Hello, hello. One, two, three, four. Dirty fellow, yellow, yellow. Check one, two. Hi,
Hello,
hi.
hello.
Sound check. Have I posted the link? Yes. Hi, good evening. Welcome back again. Dobara, 30th of October, and more reading comprehension workout. And a little bit of a tricky passage, not too challenging to read as such, but the questions are nice enough to uh, challenge your brain. So, and we'll use our usual reading techniques as well as try and read it in detail because the questions will force us to do anyway. So, that would be the agenda. The link for the sheet is posted in the chat as well as the details box below. Please find it, open it in a parallel tab, read it along with me, and notice how the game works. Hi, Maverick. Good evening. How are you? How was lunch? So find the link, open the sheet, let me know if you have it. Not that, I mean, we can read it together on the screen as well, and we'll do that. But just keep a copy with you for later reference and observation. Lunch was satisfying. Hi, Devanshu, good evening. So it's actually, I launched before a minute or two. So for general, hi, hello. How is it going? These are rhetorical questions. Answer should be perfectly fine. Everything is all right. और आई विल गेट स्टार्टेड ऑन दैट लाइफ एडवाइस अगेन. आपने क्या किया लंच में? बहुत कुछ. लॉन्ग लंच, लेट लंच एंड लॉन्ग लंच, एंड देन cookies from Subway for after lunch. Yumminess. No, every day should be celebrated, and I still have some. And after that also saw a nice little show, because sometimes I mean, for my, like, let's say my context, the shows get very boring and I can barely concentrate, and a lot of times they're just running in the background, so I'm listening but not watching. But then sometimes you get hooked into a show and you're like, this is nice, and it's a very nice feeling to get pulled into a world. So I also did that in half an hour, and shared that also, something from that show also about basic philosophy. Hi, hi, Sritam, how are you? Because Sritam told me last time that he was studying 12 hours a day, I backed off a little for the last couple of days. Because I started getting worried that if you guys are already doing 12 hours on your own and then I'm adding 3 hours extra, that's a little too much. So, so that's the idea. And once again, so today's passage, the title of the video says Galileo, Newton, and Einstein. Uh, so we are uh, I mean, we will learn the reading. I mean, we have learned the reading technique and we'll apply it. But we also want to learn about Galileo and Einstein and Newton. So I've also been sharing some videos on Galileo and Einstein, or Galileo and Newton, and I want to know more about them because these are very, very cool people. We are standing on their shoulders, and so that's why the extra video share before this particular video started. Mahindra says, "Good evening." I say good evening too, and says, "Here I'm studying for." Guys, I don't think anybody. Uh, I don't remember studying. I mean, now I'm studying many hours a day because I'm serving many kinds of people, and I have to study, and that's my job. But when I was a kid, I don't remember 12 hour, like a, I mean, 6 hour day or whatever. And the thing is, I mean, I was also special. Reading wasn't a challenge for me. DI wasn't too challenging. AR back then used to be very, very easy. And maths I had completely ignored. So it's not that I was worried at all because I knew one of my sections was sorted. And that's the case for most serious contenders. Otherwise, they don't even think of CAT. One thing is generally sorted and they're like, okay, let me figure out the S. And so, yeah, 4 hours is a long time. Plus, reading and consuming language, watching a show, all of that goes into your system. A nice show, at least, right? So 2 hours of maths, 1.5 hour of maths puzzles. I mean the LR puzzles kind of a thing, and a little bit of general reading. If you haven't made a breakthrough in a subject, then you might need a 7 day, 8 day, 10 day push with a subject. But otherwise, 4 hours, 6 hours max to max. This is not the kind of exam which requires you to, unless, as I said earlier, you're just starting now and then you have to finish the syllabus. I was depressed about a few topics not happening, so I tried for long that day, nothing else. Yeah, no, Asidam, I'm not saying, I'm actually worried. So that's why I was saying that. Sridham going to IMA and I'm going to IMA. Why? You will Maverick. Sridham, IMA check 12th scores, not that great. I was in student elections. I am B. Guys start talking to each other. Great. I don't think I should be a part of this. So I posted the link for the sheet. I shall do so again if anybody has just recently joined. And we'll start in a minute. Guys, there's a lot of time for CAT and to do very, very well in CAT from now also. You just need a little bit of reorientation, prioritize RC, prioritize DILR, and both of them are kind of zero prep subjects. So uh, polish those skills and you'll be good to go. Plus, then the OMX, obviously, anyway, there's a great option. Uh, and mehnat, guys, mehnat. So if you haven't done the syllabus, then yeah, 4 hours, 6 hours is nothing because you're just consuming information. So I have posted the link again, have I? Yes, I have. One more time, why not? Find the link, open the file, and then let's go. Stop discussing problems, guys. Chalo, let's start looking at solutions. This is the solution. Just using your verbal or VARC skills, you can break through into the top colleges. That's a fact. It's also true for just DILR and just maths also. But if you totally crack one section, you often get many, many calls from top IMs as well. So don't worry about stuff. Keep at it right now. So this is the passage that we want to look at. I hope everybody has found the sheet. Plus, the thing with RC is if you master reading and vocabulary, whatever else, I mean, there's a long life after the CAT test also. Acquiring new skills becomes very, very easy, and you will have to acquire a lot of new skills. Just in the last 1 year, the world has changed so drastically. It was changing very fast earlier also. So, reading skills and general vocabulary and knowledge about the world will go a long way in whatever else you do. So, that's why, especially VARC. So, let's get started. And what I will do is I will try and run the process as much. If anything pops up which is related to our skills, I will think of it. But because this is such a lovely passage and it is teaching me so much about Galileo and Newton and Einstein, I want to absorb it fully as well. And the questions might force me to do it anyway. So let's get started. Somebody was saying start from the bottom or issues related to that. So let's skip that. Let's start from the top only. Modern science, exclusive of geometry, is a comparatively recent creation and can said to be have originated with Galileo and Newton. Galileo was the first scientist. Okay, so Galileo and Newton, and Galileo was the first scientist to recognize clearly. So Galileo was the first scientist, maybe in my story so far, to recognize clearly that the only way to further our understanding of the physical was to resort to experiment. So Galileo was for experiment, and maybe this paragraph is about Galileo. First, I want to get the broad picture, right? Those are our tenets of reading in the exam specifically. The next advance was due to Newton. Okay, this is giving me a very, very clear map kind of a thing. Why? Because if I zoom out far away also, I can see Galileo here. In the beginning, he said Galileo and Newton. Galileo was the first scientist, and the next line that I read, next advance was due to Newton. So maybe this whole paragraph is going to elaborate upon Galileo's methods or thinking or his contribution. And similarly, this paragraph is going to be about Newton. Let me continue with my jump. And let me just read the last line. Thus, problems of physics were metamorphosed into problems of mathematics. Because of whom? Because of most likely Newton. But in Newton's day, the mathematical instrument was still in a very backward state of development. In this field, again, Newton showed the mark of a genius. Again, Again, these are the kind of words that should pop out. Again, Newton showed the mark of a genius. That means in the previous paragraph also Newton must have shown the mark of a genius. So Newton paragraph here and Newton paragraph here as well. Okay, so I'm not right now diving into the detail. Let me read the last line of this paragraph as well. Unlikely that this mathematical law and order, so Newton must have brought mathematical law and order, should turn out to be restricted to certain special phenomena, and the feeling was general that all physical process of nature would prove to be unfolding themselves according to rigorous mathematical laws. And I did see mathematical instruments, etc. So I have two paragraphs dealing with Newton's day. In this field, again, he invented the calculus or something and related to maths idea, right? Now, if I look at the last paragraph, when Einstein in 1905 published a celebrated paper on the electrodynamic of moving bodies, he remarked, so now we have reached Einstein, right? In the last paragraph. Are we okay so far? Why am I doing this? Why am I broadly going through the passage quickly? Because first I want my brain to warm up. I want a few terms to pop at me. Let the repeating words show themselves. If there is a big pattern, can I spot it? And I think all of that I have done already. Yeah. So I have a broad idea of what the passage is about. It's about Galileo, Newton, and advance. And I do know Einstein came later and he advanced the ideas further. So I'm also seeing a progress Galileo, Newton, and then Einstein. Are we okay with the idea so far? I'm hoping yes. Now let me look at the questions also so that my further reading can have a little more fine tune to it, a little more sharp focus. According to the author, why did the Greeks did not conduct experiments to understand the physical world? This is a specifics driven question and I know it is going to be in the first paragraph because the Greeks came even before Galileo, if you know your basic science history, right? So I know I can look for it. Let me look at the other question. Newton may be considered one of the greatest scientists of all time. So I'll have to go into the Newton paragraph and try and get that information going. The statement, nature thus exhibited rationality and was not mere blind chaos and uncertainty, suggests that. So maybe something to do with mathematical laws and finding the laws of maths driving nature. The significant implication of Einstein's special principle. So I know this answer is going to be in that Einstein paragraph. Which of the following statements about modern science best captures the theme of the passage? And this is the broad idea overall. Are we okay with what I did right now? Because this is somebody was asking about what should be the priority algorithm. Most of the time, a preview will open up a lot, and then looking at the questions will tell you how much detail do you have to get into for this particular passage. Was there a lot of noise suddenly? Just give me a second. Meanwhile, are we okay together? Sorry for the flip. Such is life. What can be done? So that's what I'm doing, and now I want to maybe read everything. I do know that there were more questions about Newton and Einstein, and there was hardly any question about Galileo. So maybe the first paragraph can be read a little more lightly. But let me go for it anyway because I think this is fun to read. So Galileo was the first scientist to recognize clearly that the only way to further our understanding of the physical world was resort to experiment. So what is Galileo's thing? It is experiment. Let's experiment and find out about the natural world. However obvious Galileo's contention may appear in the light of our present knowledge, it remains a fact that Greeks, in spite of their proficiency in geometry, never seem to have realized the importance of experiment. Okay, there was a question about that. Greeks, in spite of their proficiency in geometry, never seem to have realized the importance of experiment. Okay, great. To a certain extent, this may be attributed to the crudeness of their instruments because uh, I mean these are ancient people, so they did not have the modern technology that we have of measurement. Still, an excuse of this sort can scarcely be put forward when the elementary nature of Galileo's experiments and observation is recalled. So, follow the story. What is the author trying to say? That the Greeks were not into experiment. Then he says partly it could be because of the crudeness of their instruments. They did not have fancy instruments. But then he later says, still, this can't be the reason, this cannot be considered the reason, because even Galileo managed his thought process with very, very simple experiments and primitive tools as such. Are we okay together? Now, if I look at this sentence, an excuse of this sort, okay, not this, elementary nature of Galileo's experiments. Now, if you notice, once again, your idea and elaboration structure comes into play. Watching a lamp oscillate in the Cathedral of Pisa, dropping bodies from Leaning Tower of Pisa. Now, this is what excites me when I read it. Oh, there was a man who was, I mean, this is before all of these laws came into being. Rolling balls down inclined planes. How curious this person must have been, right? Noticing the magnifying effect of water in a spherical glass vase. Such was the nature of Galileo's experiment and observation. And what is this? What is the connecting theme in this part? The elementary nature of experiments, very basic nature of experiments. So now connected with the Greek theory that the Greeks did not consider experiments. Some of it is because of instruments, but Lotus Galileo's instruments, his instruments are also very basic. So instruments can't be the reason for Greeks not trying out the experiment. Are we okay with what just happened? Yes. So now let's try out this question. Question number one. And tell me, according to the author, why did the Greeks not conduct experiments to understand the physical world? Let me look at the obviously wrong choices. They focused exclusively on geometry. The passage said despite their mastery or expertise in geometry. That means actually he's saying that if you know geometry, you will be more inclined to do experiments because you're already kind of good at maths. But they focused on geometry. That's why they did not experiment. This is the obvious bad choice. Let me take you back. Greeks, in spite of their proficiency in geometry, so they were proficient, still they did not experiment, is the kind of statement that is being made. So that's why this is the obviously wrong choice. Yes, you can pick an answer before me. And the answer is very, very like obvious, kind of. Their instruments of measurements were very crude. This is the trick option. This is the semi. I mean, I know people will get trapped here because they will not read the whole sentence later. They will not put it into context that there is a later still, and Galileo's simple experiments to point that heavy instruments are not needed as such. So this option can be tricky, but we just saw and read it in detail. So if you read it well, the way it's supposed to be read, I don't think the options will present a choice, I mean a challenge anymore. The Greeks considered the application of geometry nonsensical, long choice there to confuse you. The correct answer is harmonious and resonates. So they did not think it necessary to experiment. Correct. So now, if I look at this question, Newton may be considered one of the greatest scientists, and I think okay, so maybe one question with Newton. So I've read this paragraph. Now let's learn about Newton. Okay, tell me this: when you are reading this, watching a lamp oscillate and rolling balls down inclined planes and spherical glass waves, if it excites you, you're on the right process. I mean, and everything should excite you because you don't know about it, and then it should excite you especially extra because we are also slow and like completely useless, and this person without any internet, without any tools, was trying to figure out the laws of the physical world, and I think he was punished later for that. Yeah, that's a special story as well. So be excited about whatever you're reading. Think of it as, oh, I'm learning something new. And let's. Today we learned about the wine. So now I did not know about the variety of the wines before I did that passage. Now I know Chardonnay and Sauvignon are based on the grape variety. So I'm going to talk to my chef friend, and next time I'll have that little extra bit of cool information going, right? Point being, enjoy the RC process anyway. Or why RC is not really preparation, because it's fun. So Newton, the next advance was due to Newton, the greatest scientist of all time. The question was, why is he considered the greatest scientist? If account be taken of his joint contribution to mathematics and physics, greatest scientist because of contribution to mathematics and physics. As a physicist, that means they will also be a as a mathematician. So maybe this paragraph is as a physicist, and I did see mathematician later in the next paragraph if I want to further map the information. But let me read it anyway. He was, of course, an ardent adherent of the empirical method. What is the empirical method? Let's learn the scientific method anyway, right? It's useful as a citizen. So empirical method is the measuring or the testing method. So Galileo's method, and he was an adherent of the empirical method, but his greatest title to fame lies in another direction. Okay, greatest title to fame. Prior to Newton, mathematics, chiefly in the form of geometry, had been studied as a fine art without any view to its physical application other than very trivial cases. But again, your reading skills are always playing out. When I notice this, but what can I say? Prior to Newton, the application of mathematics was trivial. But with Newton, what is going to happen? Simple gains, right? This is like a reminder of your basic reading skills. There is a but coming. Even without the but, you should have anticipated before Newton, and therefore there will be an after Newton as well. After Newton, maths became important in terms of real world applications. After Newton, all the resources of mathematics were turned to advantage in solution of physical problems. Thenceforth, mathematics appeared as an instrument of discovery, the most powerful one known to man. Wow, I'm feeling something. Goosebumps a little bit. Multiplying the power of thought, just as in mechanical domain, the lever multiplied our physical action, and that's why I say maths is a tool. And those people who are scared of maths are actually confusing the tool for a servant for a master, essentially, right? It is this application of mathematics to the solution of physical problems, this combination of two separate fields of investigation, which constitutes the essential characteristics of the Newtonian method. So he merged physics and maths together. Thus, problems of physics were metamorphosed into problems of mathematics. Yeah, but there is one more whole paragraph on Newton, and because I'm having fun, and none of it was difficult to read, it's general newspaper level, editorial article level kind of a read, so no maths equation is there as such. So in this field again, Newton showed the mark of genius by inventing the integral calculus. Newton's day mathematical instrument was in a very backward state. He invented calculus and he made it more advanced. As a result of this remarkable discovery, problems which would have baffled Archimedes, Archimedes is another ancient Greek mathematician, was solved with ease. We know that in Newton's hand, this new departure in scientific method led to discovery of the law of gravitation. But here again, the real significance of Newton's achievement lay not so much in the law of formulating the law of attraction as in his having established the presence of law and order, at least in one important realm of nature. This seems like important. Law and order in the realm of nature connected to maths as such, right? Namely in the motions of heavenly bodies. Nature thus exhibited rationality and was not mere blind chaos and uncertainty. I saw a question revolving around this idea also, and I'm enjoying this so much. So basically, because once you find the maths of the nature, you're finding the fundamental reality, like what's the formula driving the universe essentially, right? So that kind of exciting. But I think I can try out a question or two. Let's try this one. The statement nature thus exhibited rationality and was not mere blind chaos and uncertainty suggests that. Choose your options. Waiting for your answers, guys. Obviously wrong option. Look, and I really do want you to notice how silly they are, right? Problems that had baffled scientists like Archimedes were not really problems. Is that what we read right now? We read because of integration or the integral calculus, problems which baffled earlier scientists could be solved easily. But what has that got to do with the nature's underlying order, right? So obviously wrong choice. Waiting for your answers. Let's see what your answers are. Perfect. Perfect. Natural physical phenomena conform to mathematical laws. That's what I read. Law, physics, math, and realizing that all law nature is not chaos and blindness. There is order and rationality and mathematics behind it. So physical phenomena conform to mathematical laws. Only a small group of natural phenomena was chaotic. How, what nonsense. You will not find it in the context. And but I know why this choice is there because it said though Newton only worked on a small phenomena, so somebody will connect it and choose this as an answer, but is not the answer. Natural phenomena were evolving towards a less chaotic future. Completely astoundingly nonsensical statement, and I hope clarity is clarity. Last, Newton, one more question. Newton may be considered one of the greatest scientists of all times because interesting question and a challenging question may require you to think and rethink. Or let me not influence you. Actually, I should not have said that. Why is Newton considered the greatest scientist? I mean, it's there in the vibe if you pay attention to the overall idea, but there are a couple of tricky options there which may trap you. Let me eliminate the most ridiculously incorrect one. Started the use of empirical method. It said he is an adherent, he's a follower, and Galileo was before him who used the empirical method. So no, he did not start the empirical method. Now which option? So Devanshu said 4, which I have eliminated. I hope you understand why. Maverick says B, and I think so too. And I think one more person, Tejasvi said B as well, option 2. Married physics with mathematics. Because if you go back to the paragraph, and I hope you have the sheet with you, you will see that the passage actually clearly says, but that still wasn't the big deal. The big deal was finding this combining physics and maths together and finding that there is an order and logic to the natural world. So that was a big deal, not specifically discovering the law of gravitation, nor inventing the integral calculus, or combining them together and the overall contribution of using maths in the physical realm. We can go back to the passage if needed. Do you want to, guys? Do you want to go back? But here again, the real significance of Newton's achievement lay not so much in the formation of the law of attraction, which is the law of gravitation. So the passage is saying that this is not a big deal, as in his having established the presence of law and order in at least one important realm of nature. So, and rigor mathematical laws, and somewhere here also, thus problems of physics were metamorphosed into problems of mathematics. And putting it all together, not there's no obvious sentence which is telling me this, but I am using my own common sense and logic and integrating the idea together. Did we miss a question? No. Okay. Okay, so now let's read the Einstein paragraph. The advantage of this approach, especially in the test scenario, question and a little bit of a question driven approach, is that otherwise, if you do the whole passage and then try out the question, you're definitely putting in 5 minutes beginning investment before you can score even 1 mark, right? Think like a manager, think like a entrepreneur. You don't want to make a very big investments before seeing the return. You want to make a small investment, see a small return, and then keep playing that game, right? In the beginning, at least. Unless you're a millionaire, which, let's say I was a millionaire, I did not need most of these things, because just by reading a lot and a lot, I mean, a wide variety of subjects, I was comfortable with the idea of, in fact, I took pride in it. I was like good at, so yeah, my example is a bad example. So Einstein now. Einstein, he remarked that difficulties which surrounded the equations of electrodynamics, together with the negative experiments of Michelson and others, I have no idea who Michelson is, would be obviated if we extended the validity of Newtonian principle of the relativity of the Galilean motion, which applied solely to mechanical phenomena, so as to include all manner of phenomena, electrodynamics, optical, etc. So long sentence, struggle with it. What you will find is Einstein is saying that if the Newtonian formulas or Newtonian Galilean formulas could be applied not only to mechanical but to all other phenomena like electrodynamics and optical, life would have been easy. That's all the statement means. When extended in this way, the Newtonian principle of relativity became Einstein's special principle of relativity. So general and specific is happening here as well. Newton had his own principle of relativity, and in Einstein's hand it became Einstein's special principle of relativity. Its significance lay in its assertion that absolute Galilean motion or absolute velocity must ever escape all experimental detection. So he concluded that absolute motion or absolute velocity, because I hope you know Einstein's relativity theory, that speed is relative, time itself is relative as such. So because of that, absolute motion cannot be measured in experimental detection. Henceforth, absolute velocity should be conceived of as physically meaningless, not only in this particular realm of mechanics, as in Newton's day, but in the entire realm of physical phenomena. So certainly it might take you overboard, but all you have to do is grab the idea that Einstein is saying that this is meaningless. Why it is meaningless, you don't need to understand. Just capture the point and move on. Einstein's special principle, by adding increased emphasis to this relativity of velocity, making absolute velocity metaphysically meaningless again, created a still more profound distinction between velocity and accelerated or rotational motion. So now this might throw you off, especially if you were coming in order, you were reading everything, and suddenly you're so tired already. But if you know that I'm focusing only on this paragraph and I'm going to get out of it very quickly, you can look at it and then back off, because you do not know what rotational motion or acceleration does, right? Some of it you remember from school, but not most of it. This latter type of motion remained absolute. Which latter type? Accelerated or rotational motion. I'm just following the pronoun right now. It is most important to understand this point and realize that Einstein's special principle is merely an extension of the validity of the classic Newtonian principle to all classes of phenomena. So now I also see a flow: Galileo, empirical method and experiment, empirical method and mathematical method, and this relativity of motion, etc. And then Einstein working on it. And this line, last line, was very important actually, that this is an extension of Newton's idea, right? You will see why it is important in a second. But I have read it. Let's see what we can do with the question. Let's try out this question first. E, give me your answers. Don't do, no. So Anubhav says, I doubt in me after doing questions driven approach. All of that doubt is basically because the comprehension is poor. My minimum requirement is finish the whole playlist just available on YouTube. A lot of these questions will vanish, because when I say start with the question, I'm not saying it as a rule or a formula or a shortcut. I'm just saying you can start with questions. You want to read the whole passage, right? The principles will remain the same. You will have to, I still read everything, I still have to track the pronouns, there will still be words which are difficult, you will still have to map and summarize and do all the things that we are doing. So it's not a big deal. That means right now the issue is somewhere else, and you are thinking the issue is, am I starting with the bottom or am I looking at the question? The issue is not that. The issue is comprehension. Write it down somewhere. The issue is clarity. You don't understand what you're reading. Once you start understanding what you're reading, it won't matter whether you start from the bottom or the top or with the questions as such. Plus concentration. It's just a game of concentration at the end. So all of these active reading techniques will help you increase that concentration. So this is like, it's a very famous Bruce Lee story. Bruce Lee points to the moon, or Bruce Lee's master in Shaolin or whatever. And the thing is, when you're pointing to the moon, you're like, oh, what a moon! Everybody's looking at the finger. So do not miss the moon for the finger. Using the finger, I'm showing you the moon, and you're saying, oh, sir, on your finger, your nails are not very pedicured or manicured, right? So you're missing the forest for the trees, etc. This is what I can say, and then I can offer a proof via some videos and via a lot more videos. For some people, 5 might be enough. For some people, 30 examples might be required to drive home that point. So that's up to you. I think the YouTube itself has like 30 hours of like this work. Please finish and absorb, and don't think for a while, right? Just absorb. So, which of the following statements, has anybody given me an answer? Is this the answer for the latest question? Which of the following statements about the modern science best captures the theme of the passage? Maverick, 150 points for Gryffindor. Heilstein, new knowledge about natural phenomena builds on existing knowledge. Galileo to Newton, Newton to Einstein. That last line saying that, oh, Einstein's special method is nothing but Newton's method, that was a very, very big line to understand everything. However, look at how ridiculous the rest of the choices are. Modern science rests firmly on the platform built by Greeks. In fact, he said Greeks were not experimenting. And in fact, the very first line actually, modern science, exclusive of geometry, is a comparatively recent creation. So, geometry is due to the Greeks, but modern science is a recent creation. So, this option was so ridiculously wrong, right? Now, to the person who was asking about question and the question, the process, and everything. That's not the game. The game is this: can I see that this option is ridiculous? Can I quickly go back and scan it, right? So I had to do this back and forth a lot of times. That remains a fact, right? So this is definitely wrong. We need to go back to the method of inquiry used by Greeks. Oh, what nonsense, right? So, third, disciplines like mathematics and physics function best when integrated into one. But then after that, he went into some other story, and before that, he was mentioning Galileo's story as well. So, is that the overall idea? No. And then I think this is the best possible choice. Yes. Yeah, yeah, process of elimination is the game. Question number four. The significant implication of Einstein's special principle of relativity is that. Tricky question, I think. Some options can be eliminated, but yeah, Maverick C was too specific in the previous one. So it's very important, huh? This thing about looking at the finger when the moon is being pointed at is a very, very important skill to remember. Back to para. Somebody has gone for one, and I know why, because it was kind of mentioned there. Absolute velocity was meaningless in the realm of mechanics. So let's go back to the para. And yeah, so see, when I saw that I could not answer it quickly, let's say whoever decided to go back, and then I go back and read a little more carefully again. So anyway, the order is not linear. The order is linear only in your head, only in your imagination that I read it and then I answer it. Not only that, is the exam is that do the instructions say read every sentence or do they say answer the questions that follow? So what is the task? Answering the question. So somewhere early in the process, question should be brought in the game. Otherwise, what are you doing? Now, Einstein, velocity. Henceforth, absolute velocity should be conceived of as physically meaningless, not only in the particular realm of mechanics, but in the entire realm of physical phenomena. So, here, this option, somebody who chose this first option, absolute velocity was meaningless in the realm of mechanics. Actually, the sentence said not only in the realm of mechanics, but all physical phenomena. So, if you wanted to go for that, there should have been more to this option. Is it clear to the person who said A? Is one eliminated? Can I eliminate one? Newton's principle of relativity needs to be modified. That's not in the idea altogether at all. And then, if you can just eliminate one more option, it is meaningless to try to understand the distinction between velocity and accelerated or rotational motion. This is like you saying it is meaningless. Hello, hello. Is the sound back? So where were we when the sound went out? This line, even if the sound went out the screen, significance lay experimental detection will not work to find out absolute velocity, and that means some experimentations or a lot of experimentations might not work. And then, yeah, so option C was this. There are limits to which experimentation can be used. Why? Because the experiments cannot find absolute velocity anymore. So there is a limitation to the experiment, and that's what the answer is. It's just that you might have to go back and forth a little. So, are we okay with the passage? I think so. The thing is, it's not very difficult to read, but at least in this case, notice you've had to read almost everything, right? But even that, almost, even if I can save like 7, 8, 9, 10 sentences, even that can be enough of a difference in our testing scenario as such. And for all those who get worried that I'm saying that just completely ignore the details, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if there are no questions around it, if you have the map, that might be enough, especially if there are no questions. If there are questions, you have the map, you go back and check it. And I'm also saying introduce the questions early in the process for the exam purposes. While training, in the beginning of the training, if you talk to people, I did not even have any questions. I would just talk about the passage. There are plenty of passages that I have gone line by line and dissected to demonstrate the reading process, like overall how to make sense of sentence by sentence, how to connect it back and forth, etc. But now exam season and everything, and finally the test is the test. So therefore a little bit of a test orientation. And you will see that in three passages, I'm sure by now you have noticed it, in some passages we go very very fast, and in some passages we have to slow down. If you notice our discussion time, it takes the same amount of time because I'm also giving this extra commentary. But if you notice the actual deductive steps taken, you will see some passages are can be done very very quickly using these techniques. And the difficult passages, again, the same techniques help us comprehend more information. Are we okay with what has happened? Yes. So this was the passage CW0305, CAT 03, the fifth passage. And we did, I think, the first one earlier in the day, the wine one. And I want to do the other three as well. You should try and finish it before I do it. And from each one, we'll learn something. So the little bit of extra reading also, because this is like Newton, Galileo, Einstein, the scientific method, Rene Descartes, all major ideas around this are should be familiar to you anyway for like that serious test prep person, right? टाइम सेटिंग में प्रेशर आ जा रहा है, और स्लो करके प्रैक्टिस करिए सर, और धीरे हो जाइए. वैक्स ऑन, वैक्स ऑफ, वैक्स ऑन, वैक्स ऑफ, और लंबे लैप्स दौड़िए, और लोड डालिए. Read more difficult stuff and everything, so that when it's easy you'll go zup 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 very very fast in most of the scenario. In the test or the mock scenario, choose your passages also. If there are five of them, three will be easy, two, one will be medium, one will be difficult. So learn to pick in the, because I can do a preview of all five. It takes a minute to do a preview, right? So do a minute preview of each of the passages, then choose which ones are very comfortable to read, then dive accordingly. Because if it's comfortable to read, even if the questions are difficult, you will manage. But if it's difficult to read, and especially if you're a linear reader, you will just get stuck in the passage and like lose time and effort and like that momentum also, right? Don't. So the aim is to basically hold on to your concentration and not let it diffuse everywhere. So laser sharpness using that active reading. There is also a yes, Sritam, everything is fine. Sritam's question answer is fine. Maverick's question, what is your score, Sritam? So Maverick G, that time that you are missing, no, this question is that indicator of that time that is like going into air. What will Sritam score do to you? So there is a post on with the samurai image, very famous samurai. He says, "Do nothing that is not useful. No left, no right. Just sit in deep verbal meditation, especially if your maths is sorted or okay. Otherwise, DILR and VARC is the secret to better shiny hair." So that's it for this session. I will see you very soon with the next couple of passages. And when I'm doing RC, and this is for members, for general members, if I'm doing RC, you should also do a little bit of whatever else on the side on your own. So that means if I today shared an RC assignment, do two, three RCs and continue with your maths process. Just don't completely rely on my participation only, in case you were doing that. आज रात एक और क्लास होगी जय महाकाल के नाम पर 10 साढ़े 10 बजे तक या उससे पहले भी तैयार रहिए. So that's it. I will see you soon. Hit the like button. It's generally beneficial for you overall in a long about way of things. And tell a friend about it. A lot of people are struggling with RC, and there is substantial amount of non-scientific bad advice floating out there. So this can help a lot.